Howard, and welcome to the second episode of, what is it called again? Stay Calm and Bake Pie. I think I got it kind of confused because it was supposed to be Stay Home and Bake Pie or Keep Calm and Bake Pie, but doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm the author of this cookbook, Ms. American Pie, and while we're all stuck at home, I'm going to give us all something fun to do, and that's make pie. So I'm here in southeast Iowa on a farm, affectionately known as Camp Dough, and today we're going to do a mixed berry crumble pie. I love the crumble toppings. It's brown sugar and butter, and it's just got this nice crunchy texture on top of the really nice, fresh, healthy berries. So let's get started. Let's get all of our ingredients and our gear together. So I'm going to step you through it again here. There's the recipes in the cookbook, which you won't really actually need because this one is just so basic. I've got my bowls for my dough and for my fruit. I've got my colander for rinsing all my berries. There's my stack of berries. Probably won't use all of those, but yeah, we'll see. The strawberries are going kind of bad, and that's good because I'm going to show you how we're going to salvage those. We've got from left to right here, the oven liner that's reusable and washable. That'll keep the berry juice off the bottom of your oven. And then next to that is the silicone rolling mat. We will roll the dough on that, and that'll just means we won't have to roll directly on the counter, especially in this time of the virus. We want to keep our everything as sanitary as possible. Okay, there's the rolling pin, and as I mentioned before, it's one with the ball bearings, not that kind of French rolling pin that's just one solid piece. I prefer having the actual rolling pin able to spin. Paper towels are super handy. When you get all that pie dough on your hands, it's nice to be able to clean them off with that instead of having the gunk all over a towel. I've got my little bowl for putting flour in for dipping my hands and sprinkling flour on the rolling surface. Here's my little water pitcher for the ice water for the dough, a couple of measuring cups, scissors for trimming the dough, paring knife for prepping the fruit, and also I use that on the dough sometimes, and the handy little dough scraper there, which I talked about in the first episode, which is so helpful for getting your pie dough unstuck off the counter. And of course, this time I did not forget my pie dish like I did last time. And for our ingredients, very simple, just the berries. And to thicken the berries, we're going to use some either cornstarch or tapioca, possibly both. I haven't decided yet. It depends on how juicy these berries seem. The strawberries are pretty gnarly. Anyway, brown sugar and butter and flour for the crumble topping. And then, let's see, sugar for the filling, flour, butter, and shortening for the dough. Don't forget to wash your hands. 20 seconds. Have I mentioned how much I love crumble topping? It's very easy to make. There's lots of different ways you could make it. You could put nuts or oatmeal or all kinds of other things in it. But I just do really basic 1 cup of flour and then a half a cup of brown sugar packed firmly and 1 stick of butter. And the butter is mostly chilled, but I softened it just a little bit because this one is hard to work in. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit soft. Okay, so here we are. What I love about making this is watching the alchemy of it, how the texture changes. It starts off with all this flour, butter, and sugar, and then it all mixes together. And again, like we do with the pie dough, work with our fingertips and massage all of that in. It takes a little time, but that's the beauty of this. It's just, we've got all the time in the world right now, right? And also this is the meditative part of what I'm doing, and the pie making process is connecting with your food. It's feeling it, you know, engaging your senses, having a tactile experience. The reason I got into pie making is because I was spending way too much time behind a computer at a .com job in San Francisco during the height of the boom. I was just like, oh my God, I need to go work with my hands. Okay, so I've worked everything in there pretty much as far as I can get it down. Like now it kind of actually looks like our pie dough. Now I'm going to start rubbing it together between my hands and letting it fall back into the bowl. Just rub it like it's ball bearings. I'm kind of almost rolling it because ultimately what I'm doing is creating little balls. That's the crumble topping that you crunch down into that butter, brown sugar and butter. And my old pie teacher, Mary Spellman in Malibu, said you can't go wrong with butter and sugar, or butter and brown sugar, I should say. Okay, so you can see that it's actually already changing color and consistency, and maybe some crumble top pies have it really crummy like this, but I like mine heartier with those bigger chunks that you can bite into. And to get it that way, you have to work on it a little bit more, and you want the warmth of your hands to help soften that butter, to work it into the sugar, and it's the rolling motion of your hands together that's going to help it create those little balls. See, it's getting a little bit more balled up. There's a little danger of going too far. If you do it too far, you'll melt all that butter and it'll just become one big huge glob. And I hope you don't do that. But if yours goes a little too far, if you can't stop touching your stuff, because people, once they get their hands dirty, they actually enjoy keeping their hands moving. But we only take it so far. And if for some reason yours does clump together too much into big solid clumps, then you can add a little bit more flour or refrigerate it, and then after it cools down, you can try to break it apart again and roll it, do like this, again, roll it. Now see, here's a big clump, that's too big, so I have to be careful not to go too far. And then you can adjust the pressure of your hands to see how much you get it to clump. Okay, so I think that's about as far as I'm going to go with this. And then I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator. Alright, so first I'm going to wash the berries. And what do I have here? 3 pints of blueberries. I don't think I'm going to use all these because, as far as I remember, I bought those for myself, at least one of those packs. So blueberries, give them a good rinse. Yeah, oh yeah, lots of blueberries. So it's probably 3 pints is probably enough for a pie, but I like my pies to be big. So I'm going to stick those in the colander. And one thing is you actually want your berries to be a little bit wet, because that way the cornstarch sticks to them. Let's see, I'll do the blackberries. See that? Just a few of those. They were on sale. And a few raspberries. Just because I said it was going to be, what, mixed berry, so we're going to stay good with that promise. It's definitely going to be mixed. With strawberries, these have been sitting for a few days because I stocked up on my pie ingredients ahead of time, and yeah, and you know, that's what we're all having to do is buy our groceries kind of in bulk instead of being able to go to the store every day. So yeah, they're not looking that swell. In fact, lovely little specimen, kind of moldy. Yeah, there's a couple of bad ones in here, but that's fine because hey, it's mixed berry, and some of these I might be able to salvage. That's how many casualties is that? Oh well, pie is not about perfection, and you know, pie is about improvisation, so you use what's on hand. So with strawberries, to clean them, you actually want to soak them, not just rinse them like we did with the blueberries. And I don't really want to look at those moldy strawberries, do you? Anyway, strawberries grow in sandy soil, so you actually are better off soaking them a little bit to get them really clean. Oh yeah, there's I lost quite a few strawberries in this round, but we'll make up for it with those extra blueberries. Hey, you know, you can put anything in a pie dish, so what if it's not all strawberries? I don't know, we could even throw some apples in there if we had to. I have leftover apples from yesterday. So I'm going to drain these after letting them soak for a minute. So I will drain the water out. And then I'm going to set those on a towel before I go to hull them all, so that they have a chance to dry even more. I'm going to sit outside on this beautiful day to make my strawberries. Okay, I'll do that again to show you. I'm going to also cut it into chunks. Okay, so dig in vertically, spin the strawberry around the knife, and cut the strawberry either like in half or quarters depending on the size. These are kind of small. So just lovely. Hey, look, you know what? We can salvage that. So I try not to be wasteful when it comes to fruit. You know, ingredients they can be expensive, and I also just don't like to waste food. I don't like to waste resources. And again, these sat for a few too many days, but that does not mean we can't use them. And nobody is going to know that these strawberries were not looking their best, because they're going to be baked into the pie. No one's ever going to see what they looked like. It's just like the pie dough when I say, hey, don't worry if there's a hole in the bottom crust, because nobody is going to see it. And of course you want to use good fresh ingredients, but hey, you know what? We're like in some special circumstances right now, and not everything is going to be perfect, and we're going to have to make do and have to make adjustments. And I think that's something that's really kind of a good lesson to take forward even after this pandemic is over. So that one I just kind of cut off some of the brown stuff. I will tell you that making pie, and not only making it, but teaching it and doing these videos, it's a win-win for me, because I love making pie. It relaxes me. It makes me feel good, and then I love how it makes other people feel good when they get to eat the pie. But also, it's what I'm concentrating on right now, so I don't have to think about anything else. It's like a meditation, kind of. It just captures my attention so fully. It makes me so present with what I'm doing that I am not thinking about the news, and I'm not stressing right now. And I have to say, if you're like me, or if I'm like other people, which I know I am, because I've been talking to friends and family, it's been really hard to sleep right now, and that's not like me. I usually hit the pillow and it lights out, but lately I lay in bed and I feel my heart racing, and it's like, oh, I guess the news is affecting me a lot more than I realized. So I'm trying to limit my news intake. I'm trying to spend more time outside, breathing in fresh, clean air. I am trying to spend more time with my dog. So here comes Doug. He's going to have lunch at the table with me. Aren't you coming to have lunch with me at the table? You can. You can come. Fine. All right. Wait, at least come and say hi, because I've already announced you, Douglas. My farmer is home for lunch. He's home like clockwork every day at noon, so here he is. Say hi.
Hello.
Say hi.
I was checking cows and I saw that there are bluebells starting to bloom. So, and there are dandelions with honeybees on them.
That's
so
a
the
good sign.
honeybees are out. Yeah.
Life is returning.
Yeah. It's spring.
Hi, I'm back. So you know me, I'm not big on measuring. I don't know exactly how many berries I have. So I'll show you my little trick for how much ingredients, how many berries I know that I'm going to put into my pie dish. I just simply put them into my pie dish. So let me show you. So these are the strawberries I cut up outside. This is a 4-cup measuring thing, so I'm going to dump that in there. And then I'm going to scoop into my other bowl of berries here, just to get an idea. Maybe do another 4 cups, so it might even be like 8 cups of fruit. I like big pies. My pie teacher, Mary, taught me one line that I repeat all the time to myself, and that is, don't be stingy. And then when we're doing a berry pie, or sorry, when we're doing a crumble top pie, you want enough of a flat surface so that your crumble doesn't go falling off, tumbling down the side of the mountain. So that's actually almost 8 cups of fruit, just to give you a guideline. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mix my berries into the dish. I'm going to use about, here's a 1/2 cup measuring cup, all right? I'm going to do about, I don't know, maybe less than a cup of sugar. You know, I always say it's like with apple pie, it's 3 pounds of fruit to 1 cup sugar. That's like the rough estimate. With berry pie, who knows, you know, how tart are your berries? I just don't like an overly sweet pie. I think we have enough sugar in our lives without adding too much in the pie. And also, if it's not sweet enough, you can serve it with ice cream, right? So I'm going to put in probably, it's a little bit more than 3/4 of a cup, but I would say definitely less than 1 cup. I would usually do this with my hands, but look, we're going to do the happy face spoon today. But yeah, don't be afraid to use your hands to mix this up. Okay, that's just the sugar. I also need to add the thickener, whatever it is I'm going to use for that. So I've got cornstarch and I have tapioca. With a blueberry pie, I would normally just use cornstarch. With a strawberry crumble pie, strawberries only, I would definitely use tapioca. So I'm going to sprinkle in, this is minute tapioca. It's the small granules if you're looking to buy it. Don't worry, if you don't have it, cornstarch is fine. I would say about a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. 3 tablespoons is about a 1/4 cup. So something like that. Anyway, I'm going to stir in the tapioca. And the thing about this is that it needs to sit for about 15 to 20 minutes to sort of activate. Now with the dough this time, we are only making a 1/2 batch of dough. We're just doing a single crust because the top is going to be the crumble topping, so we don't need the top crust. If you want to make a full batch of dough, that's great. I mean, in my case, I have lots of leftover berries, so I could make a second pie if I wanted to, and berry pie freezes just fine, so that's an option. But I'm just going to make the single batch, and I'm going to walk you through that. We'll do a little bit of a refresher on the dough making, but also we're doing just a 1/2 batch this time, so less rolling also. So what we're going to do is, like we did before, instead of 2.5 cups of flour, it's going to be 1 1/4. Whoops, that's not a quarter. I'm not very good at math. Like, I'm also not about precision, remember that. So, okay, that's roughly a 1/4 in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm not worried about, I'm just not worried about precision. So 1/4, 1 cup and 1/4. And then remember the bowl of flour that we used for putting on the rolling surface and for dipping our hands. Okay, do we still want a little bit of salt today? I'll go get some, hang on. my little baby shaker here. Yeah, just a little for good measure. Let's see, what else? I'm going to kind of mix that salt around in there with my hands. We're just going to do a 1/4 cup of butter instead of a 1/2 cup this time. So that would be basically 1/2 stick. And remember, the butter should be chilled. Some bakers even put it in their freezer. And I'm going to cut that up into some sizable chunks that we will work into the dough later. And then the vegetable shortening, of course, optional. You could do all butter, you could do all shortening, you could do lard, you could do whatever you want. It's your pie. In this case, I like 1/2 butter, 1/2 shortening, and this is what I say is a heaping 1/4 cup, because I'm finding lately that that little bit of extra shortening gives my crust that little bit of extra lightness and flakiness. But the butter is what really gives it such a great taste. So you're going to work the shortening in with your fingertips very lightly. We're not kneading this. Remember, I'm going to say this 100 times throughout this video series. We're not making bread. This is pie dough. It's very quick. It's very light. We don't want to get the heat of our hands into the dough because that would really sort of melt the butter, and what you want is to have chilled ingredients. So the shortening works in really quickly. So just make sure that's all kind of worked in. Again, just light fingers. I can't emphasize that enough. And then I've got these chunks of butter, so I'm going to fish around and find them and then break them up with my thumbs and let them fall back into the bowl. I think there were only a few in there. This is 1/2 a batch, so it's much easier. And now I'm going to work it a little bit further so that those pieces of butter are not more than the size of let's say I want them about the size of an almond, not really much smaller than that. Some people say pea size, but I think almond size is better. So that didn't take long, you see, and I didn't do much working with it at all. It's very quick, and this is the part I want to emphasize. Don't overwork your dough in this stage, nor in this stage. Here I've got my ice water again, and see that little spout that's going to hold the ice cubes back? Super handy. And I just drizzle it in, and then toss it around like salad dressing. Very light, just a couple of times. Don't do that for too long. Just get your hands in and then get them out again. And then just keep drizzling that water until you see that the dough is, not just see it, but feel it. You feel that dough is holding together. I'm just going to keep moistening that. Just focus on getting the water in there and not so much on the touching of it. Just kind of roll it around. And I'm starting to see a little bit of change in the texture. And oh, I think I kind of overdid it with the water that time. Too bad. So yeah, see, I wish you could feel this. It's pretty wet. It's like almost sopping wet. My bad. But I am not worried about that because, as I've said before, you can take a little bit of extra flour and it'll take the wetness out of it, takes the stickiness out of it, and as I showed you in the apple pie video, flour mittens, so when you go to pick up your dough, it doesn't stick to your hands. And then I'm going to form it into, well, that was sort of a ball, but then I'm immediately went into the disc making phase. So I've got my wrists together, wrapping my fingers around to kind of tuck that edge under in order to give it a smooth edge. Don't worry about what it looks like on the bottom here. No one's going to see that. It's going to get rolled out. The point is that we want to get it flattened and kind of smooth-ish. Like, don't worry about that. See, that doesn't matter. I can kind of squeeze that in. But again, don't overwork it in this phase. I see people doing this, and it's the heat, so much heat in the palm of your hand, so I don't recommend doing that because you want your dough to stay cool. We started off with chilled ingredients. We want to keep it as cold as possible. So that's why I just do a quick little thing around the edge and then I'm done. So try to avoid doing this hand flattening thing. So you can do it and just rotate the disc in your hands. And now we're ready to roll this dough. So a couple of things. One, remember when I said last time that you don't need to refrigerate your dough, that some people tell you you have to refrigerate it overnight or for at least 30 minutes, and Unless my kitchen is exceptionally hot and the dough is melting and drooping and sticking everywhere, I don't refrigerate my dough because the ingredients are still cold. The butter is in there. You can see the big chunks of butter, and that's a good thing. That means our pie dough is going to be nice and flaky and also delicious. The other thing I want to remind you of is a clean counter space is critical when it comes to rolling dough. So make sure there's not a drop of water or any of this gunk from when you were making your pie dough on your counter space, and then clean off the lip of this pie scraper, dough scraper. I don't even know what you call this thing. I actually saw it sold once. It came in a box called a bash and chop, which I think is a terrible name for such a useful tool. Okay, the insurance policy. Do you recall this? This is when you sprinkle the flour on your rolling surface, and then you put your pie dough on top of that little floured space, and then sprinkle a little flour on top. And this will keep your rolling pin from sticking to the dough. I just touched my dough. I don't recommend that. Try to leave your hands off of the dough. Okay, I've got my rolling pin. If it's a little bit warm or your pin is sticky for some reason, you can always add, just, I don't know, rub it with some flour. Okay, remember the horseback riding technique where you take charge, you tell that dough who's on top. So you're going to alternate your direction, kind of give it a firm but smooth pressure. If you go too hard, you're going to see, I don't know, can you see that gouge in my dough? You don't really want that. You just want to keep it nice, smooth, even strokes, and don't neglect the edges. Make sure you go all the way off the edges, and then coax the dough the direction you want it to go. So as I've said, and this maybe sounds silly, but it's like I'm riding my horse around the arena. Just kind of, or like NASCAR. Does NASCAR go around a circle? I don't know. If they do, anyway, I heard that NASCAR has gone online and it's getting more traffic than ever. They're probably going to crash the internet. So, okay, I forgot to flip my dough over. Sometimes I'll roll it just a couple times, and then I'll take the disc and flip it over to make sure there's flour underneath and above. I forget to do that all the time, and it doesn't matter. It's just one of those things that can help. And try not to go too crazy with the sprinkling the flour. It's just when there's pieces of butter that get really soft, it can help take keep it from sticking to your rolling pin. And anyway, today my kitchen is not as hot as it was last time, so that's good. I'm not going to go maybe as thin as I could. My pie teacher taught me that when she learned from her mom, they made their pie dough on a kitchen table like an oilcloth, and it had stripes in it, and she said that you would roll until you could just start to see the red stripes of the tablecloth through the dough, which means think about that as being rather transparent, but not worried about that today. Let's see. So, and I want to also just gauge, hey, is that big enough? Does it show that when I hover my pie dish over it, is there enough overhang to compensate for the pie dough going down in the dish, and then also a little bit over the edge, because we need that edge in order to make a fluted crust. Okay, so the trick again, if it's sticky, that's off camera, let's see, here we go. You just put a little flour on the edge of the dough, and then use this handy little scraper thing to nudge the flour under there, so that if there are any sticky parts, it doesn't, oops, I just damaged my own dough, who cares? All right, so I'm just going to do a little bit at a time, and then pick it up and pull it back. I'll do a little bit more, and actually it is kind of sticking a little bit, so sprinkle some flour, and I'm not pushing it so far that it's mangling the dough. I'm just going a little bit at a time, and it is actually a little sticky today, so I'm coming in at it from the other side, and then from this side, picking it up at the fold. I want to pick it up at a place where I'm not as likely to rip it, because it's maybe thinner or more ragged in some spots than others. So I'm coming at it from all sides so that I can make sure that it's, oh yay, all free and clear. Okay, I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to clean this gunk out of the way so it doesn't get onto the bottom of my pie dish. Cleaning this off again. Nice to keep all of our stuff clean. I'm going to bring my dish over to the pie dough, drag it halfway across. When I did my video the other day, it was really cloudy outside, and today's really sunny, so maybe it's a little bit harder to see. The light is a little funky, but okay. I'm going to try to lift that up just a little and scoot it over so that it's laying more centered in the dish. Oh, and look, another hole. Do you see? I made thousands of pies, and I still have holes in my bottom crust. And now you see it, now you don't. I just pressed on it a little and pushed the space right out, so not to worry. I'm going to take my scissors and trim so that I don't have so much hanging over, but I still want some hanging over. You get the idea? I'm just turning the dish as I go. I could actually pick it up and do, or I can lean into the side and come at it that way. All right, but I'm going to put those scraps over to the side. And it's not even, and it doesn't matter. Oh, look at that. Hey, you know what? Watch this. Now you see it. Now you don't, right? So that's the kind of stuff, like, just don't worry so much. It's not going to look like that once you get it all put into place. So I'm going to work at 12 o'clock. I'm going to pick up the bottom crust. I'm going to roll it like it's as if it's like a little pencil between my fingers, rolling it so that it sits right on the rim of the dish. And I don't want it hanging below the dish. I want it on the rim. And this is going to build up like a moat, so that a little guardrail, so to speak, so that your filling doesn't come oozing out. Okay, now here I don't really have enough to do a nice edge, so I'm going to take some of my scraps and I'm going to build that up a little bit. I just worked in, see this little piece of dough? I'm just going to work it in so that I have a more consistent and even edge all the way around. No one's ever going to know I did that, you see? And here's another spot. I don't know, I guess I rolled my dough a little thicker than I might normally, but I'm just going to put that thing in there, and by the time I do the crimping, it'll just push that little piece all together. So, and notice how I am turning the dish and not my body as I do this setup. And this is just a setup for the crimping, so you're not crimping it as you go. We're going to do that later. But the other thing about this is that you don't have to crimp. You could just leave it like this. So it's fine. It's just, you know, it's still, it looks like a homemade pie, right? So not to worry, but I like to do the crimping because I just think it looks pretty, and I don't know, it impresses people for whatever reason. So I'm going to take my bowl of flour again. I'm going to dip my fingers, and this is the clothespin, the placeholder, and this index finger is the action finger, and it's going to rock in. It's going to take the dough in between these two fingers, a little bit of dough with the finger, and push it in. So I'll show you now. I'll just work over here so you can see. So these fingers go on top of the crust. This rocks in. Pick up the fingers, move over to where you left off, and push in. See if I can do that more straight on. See that? Oops, and there's a little piece sticking out. I'm going to push that in. Now the thing I want you to remember, and if it gets jagged like this, a couple of things. If you do it too tight, you want to have it kind of chunky, chubby, I guess you could say, because if you do it where it's too, you make the dough too thin, it's more likely to burn in the oven, that thin dough. So you want to leave it kind of as consistent as possible, get the little hanging bits off of there, and you can go a little faster. You can dip your fingers once in a while so that the dough doesn't stick to them. Oops, and see, it just was sticking a little bit. Don't worry about it, just use the flour. And here's a piece that I had tried to work in, and it's not perfectly worked in, but it's gonna melt in the oven anyway. And keep turning the dish, not your body. And try not to push the dough in off the edge. Try to stay on the edge and not out past the edge either. Oh, hello. Not a problem. Look at that. I put it back. Sort of. I'll have to fix that. But anyway, you get the idea. Okay, at least I'm not Julia Child cutting my finger on camera and having blood gushing everywhere. And now it's ready for the filling, which has been sitting there, I think, about 15 minutes. And it's holding together nicely. It's not too runny or juicy. I mean, it's juicy, but that tapioca is going to help. And it did shrink down a little bit once it's soaked in the sugar. So I'm going to kind of flatten it out as much as possible so that, ooh, that's going to be so good. And to my niece in Seattle, I'm so sorry I can't share this with you. And I do hope that you'll make it yourself. And to my sister whose birthday it is today, I hope you get some pie. And next time I see you, and there will be a time when I get to see you again, I'll make you one of these. All right, so the crumble topping, I took it out of the fridge. And if you remember, it was in a glass bowl, but I needed that bowl for my pie dough. So I'm just going to kind of dump it on there and then spread it around. I'm going to use all of that. And remember, that's half a stick of butter. So just kind of scoot it around there. Distribute it. And there's some of those balls. Oh, God, that's going to be it. All right, that's the crumble topping. And it is ready for the oven, my friends. And we're going to start, as I've said, 425 degrees. By the way, this little bowl of flour that we use for dipping our fingers, that's going to be thrown away. I just want to make that clear. So you can see it's getting brown, and we'll turn the temperature down to 375. Nope, not bubbling yet. Aha! Do you see why I suggest an oven liner? One that's reusable and washable. So it's thickening, but you see it's a little juicy still. I'd like it to thicken a little bit more than that. I like to bake it until the pie actually looks like it wants to explode out of the dish. And if you will notice, I have this wonky oven, so I had to turn the temperature down to 350 because 375 was getting the pie a little too brown. So not to worry, just keep an eye on it, as I've said before. Oh, and here's my helper. Today we have Miss Peanut Butter Pie. Hey, not on camera. Okay, thank you. Let's talk about that pie in the oven for a second. First of all, the reason I cannot be a professional baker is because I'm always forgetting stuff, if you haven't figured that out by now. And one of the things I notoriously forget to do is set my oven timer. But that's why I stay close to the pie in the kitchen. I keep checking it, at least, and I was sitting here in the kitchen a little bit ago and I could start smelling the pie. So that's a good indicator that it's time to check the oven or that it might be getting close to done. But in this case, as I just showed you, it's bubbling over, but it's not quite thickened enough for my taste. And the more you let it bake and thicken on its own in the oven, the less time it will require to set up after the fact. And one of the things that it's just really, I don't know, I'm always impressed when you can cut into a berry pie and not have it just leak out all over the place. So I'm going to leave it in there probably another 5 minutes. Like I have suggested on all my pies, stay close to the oven and check it every 10 minutes at least. And what else? Yeah, the oven temperature. It's just like if it gets too brown, you don't need to put foil around the edges. Don't fuss with that. You don't need one of those crust rim protectors that's metal. You just turn the temperature down, and that should help keep the pie from getting too brown. So I turned it down to 350. I just, I don't know what's up with my oven. It's either too hot or not hot enough. And I turned it down to 350, and you don't really want to go lower than that, otherwise the filling just may not have a chance to keep baking at that, that bubbling temperature that it needs to get to. So yeah, just keep an eye, and don't be like me. Set your oven timer. And I do have a timer on my phone, but as usual, I just forgot to set it. But I'm staying in the kitchen, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not going to burn that damn pie. Now you see, it's thicker than it was before. See, it's bubbling. Ooh, it's really bubbling. It's bubbling and thickened. And I'm gonna, I don't know. No, see this right here? Ugh, it's hot. That still looks a little bit juicy. I'm just gonna give it 5 more minutes. Pie is like trying to almost lift out of the pan, like it's almost exploding. Like this is a lot thicker now over here. Where is it? Right there, over here. Oh, there's my timer. See, I did set it. Okay, well, I'm gonna call this done. Luckily it didn't get too brown. And we're letting the pie cool outside on the table to keep an eye on it so the birds don't swoop down and try to eat it. You can hear the birds in the background.